We are in 2024, so 14 years ago, I had just become Vice-Chancellor at the University of Ghana. And I used to talk everywhere, largely because of my own background as a research economist. I was very interested in research. So I used to think about how I could motivate the whole of the University of Ghana to become more interested in research. And in so doing, I could tell how much money the university stood to gain from being a lot more oriented towards research. People who fund universities around the world don't give universities money to go and train undergraduate students. They give you money to go and do research. Industry gives you money to do research that will support their work. That's why they give you money. They don't give you money for the number of students that you have. It is governments that give money to universities for the number of students that they have. So the idea was to turn the University of Ghana into a research-intensive university. And that is exactly what we sought to do. And in doing so, by becoming a research-intensive university, you are able to provide guidance to your community, to your nation, to government, in terms of what is required for, So if you are a country like Ghana, and you have universities, but they don't do any agricultural research, they don't do any health research, they don't do any social science research, how do you intend to generate evidence that will guide policy? It's not going to happen. And indeed, that explains why many developing countries are where they are, because they needed knowledge that will guide policy and other initiatives. That's what exists. They borrow from outside. They borrow from Europe. They borrow from North America. You are not going to improve on your agriculture if you don't do research. You are not going to improve on the health of your children and mothers and fathers, anybody, if you don't do research. If you don't do research into malaria, you only buy malaria medications coming from China. It has not been designed for you anyway. It may or may not work. So that's what makes research important. Doing research matters for the development and transformation of societies. Any economy where they don't do research, as in most African countries, they don't do much research, transformation is slow. Transformation basically involves applying new knowledge to the things that you do. So if you produce cassava, applying new knowledge to the production of cassava, applying new knowledge to the production of rice, and so on. That is where transformation is going to come from. If you don't do that, from year to year, you will simply be producing and seeing that nature is taking care of things, but in a very slow way. And as nature gets tired of you, things begin to slow down. And so research is important. So African countries seeking to have more research-intensive universities, it's not something that you are doing for fun. You are doing it because without it, there's no future. And it's something that as university academics, you should be mindful of. We don't do research because it is nice. We don't do research because it's going to lead to promotion. I know that privately, that's the main motivation for all of you, but the research goes well beyond promotion. Long after you have become a professor, people will be asking, what did you add to the body of knowledge in your area? If you are a professor of finance, what did you bring to the table as a professor of finance? You wrote papers. What kind of papers? What research was behind those papers? It's very, very important. So we say various metrics show that research in Africa is improving at universities. Research in Africa is improving. Generally, everybody knows that research in Africa has been far less than in the rest of the world. It has been far less. But the good thing is that it is improving. If it's improving, it is not for nothing. It is not at all for nothing. It's not because all of a sudden African researchers realized that they've got to do research. No, it didn't happen like that. It's improving because African universities, as I said earlier, are beginning to appreciate that the only way you can make a meaningful contribution to the development of policies and initiatives for transformation is through the research. And as we do more advocacy, as we put more pressure on them, then we'll see the improvements coming up. In the last few years, you've heard of how the University of Cape Coast has become the #1 ranked in the university in Africa, in Ghana, in West Africa, and #7 in Africa. You've heard it, haven't you? And they are so, I was in Cape Coast 2 weeks ago, they are so proud of it. And I don't blame them for being proud of it. I'm quite sure if you were in that situation, you would make even more noise than they are making. I'm quite certain about that. But how did they, it didn't happen because people in Cape Coast all of a sudden woke up and decided that we're going to do more research. It's happening because the University of Cape Coast understood that research intensity requires effort and resources, and pumped more resources into that, giving the staff more resources to do research, guiding them, documenting that, and using the documentation as evidence, which the ranking organizations look at. I'm sure there are many universities in Ghana that are doing research not too different from what Cape Coast is doing, but they are intentional about it. They are documenting everything that they do. Every penny or peso they spend on the research is documented. Those who rank universities want evidence. Those who rank universities, they want to see evidence of a relationship between your university and industry. They want to see evidence of a relationship between you and funding agencies. They want to see your publications. So there are many they want to see improved governance. They want to see that the academics doing the research are independent and they are free to research anything. So these things properly documented are essential. And that's what Cape Coast is doing. Other universities are not doing. I hear things like, oh, don't mind them, they're going to pay money. They haven't paid any money to anybody. They haven't paid any. I know how it's done. In 2015, I was Vice-Chancellor. We did the same thing. We were ranked 7th in Africa. And people say, oh, he was going to pay $30,000. I didn't pay anybody anything. I knew the value of documentation much more than many people appreciate in higher education. I knew, and if you were in Lagos in those days, I gave them pressure. If you didn't have a PhD, we won't promote you. We won't appoint you even lecturer. People were insulting me. I didn't die. If you insult me, it won't kill me. It will take away my salary. But through those pressures that we gave them, through the resources, in between 2010 and 2014, we sent out 250 people to go and do PhD and come. After the number who went, only probably about half came. It takes leadership. It takes a conscious effort. It takes intentionality. You want to change. You cannot change a university and how it operates and how it looks and how it contributes by simply listening to everybody. If they insult you, they say, hey, they will insult me, so I will do it too. If you're a Vice-Chancellor, nobody insults you, you're not doing your work anyway. The insults reflect the kind of pressures they are getting from you. And it's your job. You are being paid to give them pressure. You are being paid to set standards. You are being paid to show the way. But if you are going to let them show you the way, then there's no point. I take it that the management of UPSA inviting me here today reflects their appreciation of the need for change. Madam Ivy, is that the case? You want to change? Mm-hmm. In 2017, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast invited me to come and do something very, very similar to what you are doing. The room was packed. Have this big auditorium in Cape Coast. It was packed. And we talked about the same things. And within 2 years, I saw the changes taking place. They began insulting the Vice-Chancellor. And I told him, that's good. Once they are insulting you, they are beginning to feel the pinch. And they will do it. Give them incentives. What is unfortunate about this growth in Africa is the fact that most of it comes from South Africa. So we've seen the growth. We've moved from under 1% to 3.5% for the last decade. But most of it, about 85% of it, is coming from South Africa, which is something that we can change. We can change that easily if we put our minds to it. So this chart here basically is supposed to show the spending that we make, and it's linked to the population and so on. So basically, those economies where they spend more on research also tend to have a larger number of researchers available, and so the representation of research in the community, the representation of research in budgets, the representation of research in every policy making and so on is much larger than we do. In Africa, we are not spending enough on research, and we need to improve on that. The African Union has a target of 1% of GDP, which we are not anywhere near in many, many countries. So, we talk about key issues related to research capacity. Basically, this shows you the kind of discrepancies that we have in terms of the distribution of researchers by region. We find that there are more researchers in North America and the Western Europe than in our part of the world. We also see the gender gaps. The fact that there are many more researchers, male researchers in Africa than there are female researchers. That is changing, though. We've seen that the gap has narrowed considerably in the last decade. There's another problem with the brain drain. The fact that we have fewer researchers than per million people than other parts of the world, does not mean that we don't train them. Over the years, we have sent large numbers of people from different African countries to Europe, to North America, to many different places to go and study, to come and do research. They go and then they become what they call the diaspora. Today, I see people try to justify, it doesn't matter, let them be wherever they are. They can be the diaspora and contribute to our work here. That may be true, but is that what we really wanted? If I'm sick and I go to a hospital and the doctors are in Saudi Arabia, they are in the US, they call what they call the Association of African Diaspora Doctors, so they are there and they can send emails and send whatever contribution they can to. Does it matter to me as a sick person that the remittances are coming from Ghanaian doctors in Saudi Arabia? No. I want to see a doctor live where I am. I want to see researchers sitting here and doing the work that researchers, instead of they being in North American university or some European university and say they are contributing. So the brain drain has been a major problem. More Africans living outside of Africa publish than the Africans living in Africa. And so, if we want the world to pay attention to our research, we want the world to notice the work that we are doing, we got to live in Africa and do work in Africa that is relevant to the Africans. That's the philosophy that we should bring into all of this. Now I talk about the research environment in Ghana. We are pursuing the SDGs, supposedly. We are promoting the Sustainable Development Goals. We are professing to the whole world that by 2030, we will achieve these 17 development goals in a very sustainable manner. We are interested in poverty and inequality. We are interested in the environment. We are interested in sustainable cities and communities, institutions, partnerships for development. We are interested in these things as a nation, as Ghana. And yet, we are not doing much in terms of achieving them. We are not being intentional about achieving these. We are interested in poverty and inequality, but we are pursuing this through social protection programs that are dated. On the upper one, I show the publications coming from KNUST, UG, and UCC. I use them because they are the three highest producing in Ghana. So Legon is at the top, followed by KNUST, and then UCC. So Legon, as of 2023, was doing over 2,000 publications in cyber per annum. And the KNUST was doing about 1,600, and then UCC follows with about 700 per annum. So they are going in the right direction. They are going in the right direction. They are growing. They are increasing. It's a steady growth. But our view is that they can do far more than they are doing. They can do far more than they are doing. The universities in South Africa are doing about 20 times what their Ghanaian counterparts are doing. They are doing about 20 times. Of course, they also spend more than 20 times on research than we do. So it's not surprising. The more you spend, the more you get. If you don't spend on research, you don't get out of that. And then the chart below shows a group of newer universities. So GIMPA, Winneba, and then UPS. You are newer universities, so you cannot be expected to have the same kind of track record. What is good here is that you're also growing. You're also growing new output. I think in this, I think you overtaken Winneba, right? You overtaken GIMPA, yeah, in terms of applications. So that is good. If I were you, I'd be very happy that we are also doing something. That we are doing something. But before you get swollen-headed, you are doing something. But you can do far more. You can do far more. That's why I'm here. I'm here to encourage you to be more aspirational, to be more ambitious, to want to do more. Not simply because it will make you a professor. I know that for personal reasons, you want to become a professor, which is good. I don't have any quarrel with it. But you want to be a professor with a purpose, a professor who makes impact, a professor whose work leads to change. I hope you understand me. Do you agree? Who doesn't agree? If you don't agree, raise your hand, let me see. Who is here who just wants to become a professor? It doesn't matter what type of professor. These days, everywhere I pass, I see, prof, big prof. Hey, you know, in the good old days, when I walked around Lagos, when we were students, and I heard, this man is called Professor so-and-so, Professor so-and-so. I was surprised, because when I go to the bookshop, I see his books there. You see, the man may be in chemistry, and me, I'm in the economics. But I know the name, because when I go to the bookshop, I see his books being sold. When I go to the library, I see his books. When I talk to my classmates from other disciplines, they are always talking about Professor so-and-so, Professor so-and-so. So even before I meet the man or woman, I've heard the name. These days, you see Professor so-and-so, you go to the bookshop, there's nothing to show. The men and women are all professors, but nobody has felt them. If you're a professor, let the students feel you. The students must feel you. They must hear your name everywhere. They must see your good works. What did Jesus say? Let your light so shine before men. If you are a professor and your students can't see your light, Maxwell here is a priest. Maxwell, yes, I'm okay with Bible. You see? So if you're a professor, let your students feel you. If you're I'm happy that publications are growing at UPS. They can grow more. The university has to invest more, and we'll talk about how to do it. So I go to the things that are holding us back. Apart from the challenges that we face internally, there are also pressures that come from everywhere. How many students do you have? How many students do you have at UPSA now? How many? 23,000. 23,000, that's big. That's big. That's where Legon was about 15 years ago. After more than 60 years, that's where Legon was. 23,000. But you didn't just wake up and decide that you want to go to 23,000. And I'm quite sure you have aspirations of even taking more. There are pressures for expansion because more and more kids need to go to university. So those pressures are going to be there. And as you teach more and more students or have larger and larger classes, the less time you have for research. Not so. The less time you have for research. If you are at Legon and you have a class in philosophy with about 800, 900 students, and you have to grade them, do exams, grade them, expect to do various assessments in the course of the year, where will you find the time to do research? It's not going to happen. It takes a lot of initiative to be able to go around these things. But in addition to all of these problems that we have, we face a situation where the type of funding or support that we receive for research is not the most appropriate. Many organizations that you will be applying to for support to do research will give you research money, grants of a short-term duration. Very, very seldom will they give you grants that go beyond 3 years. If you are lucky, in a very lucky situation, that you get grants that go beyond 3 years. And to do that, also, in order to get the grants, there'll be so many different modifications that will be required, conditions that you have to meet in order to get these kinds of grants. And you take away from your freedom. You take away from your freedom to do the type of research that you require to have the kind of impact that we are talking about. So the landscape that we face is one that is not equal if you compare it. So for many Africans that you will find doing research, in whether it's in food or whether it's in health, whether it's in poverty or whatever, it's happening because somebody you know at University of Manchester, somebody you know at Oxford, somebody you know at New York University has received a grant from NIH, a grant from Rockefeller Foundation, from somewhere, and then comes to you because he knew you as a student when you were both in the UK or US, and then comes to you and says, look, I have this grant to do work on cowpeas. Are you interested to join me, partner with me? Of course, you are broke. There's nothing happening. So small galamsey, this is academic galamsey, then you go and do it. So most of the research that we do in this country is a consequence of academic galamsey. Do you agree? You know it. You know how it works. I'm quite sure you're all engaged in it. You'll be there, somebody will come from FAO and say, so we have a small grant, go to Accra to go and do this small survey for me. 2 weeks, you're done, you reach your report, you collected your 20,000. That's how people survive also. All I'm saying is, I'm not saying don't do it too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't do that one. But if that is all we are going to do, if you are going to be an academic for 30 years before you retire, and all you are doing is this small things. You see? So I have to learn, I have to tell my younger colleagues when I was mentoring them, be selective. Be selective in what you do. When somebody comes and says, I have $50,000 to do a project, ask yourself, apart from the money that I'm getting, what else do I get? Are there any publications associated with it? If there's no publication, of course, it depends on where you have reached with your building level. If you have reached a lintel and the contractor is harassing you, then you decide whether you take the 50,000 and go and count the number of shops in Medina or what, or you know, being selective means if I have a choice between your 50,000 to go and do something that is not going to yield any academic benefits, and somebody else is offering me 40,000 to go and do a book project using survey data that's already there. And then out of that project that we do, I will get a journal article and I'll get a book chapter. I prefer that one. You get me? I prefer the one that is $5,000 less than the other one, but it will also enhance my capacity as an academic. That's how people like me survived. I'm telling you my own story now. That is how I survived. I did most of the work that I did when I was in my 30s and 40s and I could walk properly. These are things that I did with the World Bank Research Department, not with the people who are actually giving money to nations, but the research department. They are giving far less than the people giving money to the Ghana government to do this or do that. But it was all very, very calculated because many of them will end up in journals. And many of them will end up in books. And these were the things I needed for my promotion. You see, if somebody says, oh, this man has done a lot of work on informal finance, it didn't just happen. I happened to be interested in informal finance, and I managed to persuade the World Bank to be interested as a precursor to what is today known as microfinance. So we made positive change in the field, but we also made money out of it. You see? So you can make money and also be effective. Don't think only about the money. If you think about the money, you will build a nice big house, go and buy a house in Trasago Valley. You go and buy a house there. You drive a nice SUV. Everybody will look at you and envying you. And then one day, you retire. And then your people say, I got UPSA 40 years. Professor Ernest. Then Asamoah. How do you explain to your children that you spent 40 years here and there? You walked away empty-handed, only with a house. I'm making you feel bad because I want to motivate you. That there's life after death. There's life after death. And after all the money, you still have to live. You still have to live and be responsible and be able to explain your time as an academic. 40 years. Okay, for many people, you are around 30 years. If you came in at 30 years old and you retire at 60, 30 years, what did you achieve? When the children go to the bookshop, do they see your books? That is what you should be thinking about. But of course, you don't want to put things in the bookshop that nobody can read. Put things there that people will be quoting in Nigeria, they'll be quoting it in Legon, they'll be quoting it in the UK. That is how you will retire feeling fulfilled. That, for me, the thing that has made me the happiest my whole life as an academic. I was sitting at Lusaka Airport, Zambia. And then I think I was reading something. I had forgotten to pay attention to the boarding of the flight. Then they called, Ernest Aryeetey, you are delaying flight, so. He called it 3 times. So when I got up, a young man walked to me and said, oh, are you the Aryeetey who wrote? I said, yes. Oh, I've been reading your books. I was so happy that somebody sitting in Lusaka knew my work more than even my children probably do. That has been, for me, the proudest moment in my entire career. So one day, when somebody in Lagos or somebody in Dar es Salaam comes to you and say, Professor Maxwell, Reverend Professor Maxwell, I've been reading your work and I was quite persuaded to do this because of you. Then you know that yes, you have arrived. How are we doing? Are you following what I'm doing, or I'm just wasting your time? So we have all these changes that I've talked about, and I've said there's a need to be intentional about change. People must be motivated and want to see change. I used to run a network of now 23 universities called the African Research Universities Alliance. And this alliance was created largely to make it easier for African universities to do more research and obtain support for research, with the understanding that working collaboratively, they will be more impactful, that working collaboratively, they will be more able to solve the problems of their communities. That's why ARUA was formed. So, thank you. So the whole idea behind having such this comes from the vice-chancellors of these universities recognizing that whether it's University of Ghana or University of Cape Town, the challenges of our immediate community are so huge that none of us could meaningfully make any dent on these challenges. But working together will provide an easier way. So, for example, let's take climate change. Climate change is huge. And every university clearly is under pressure to do research that shows how to deal with climate change. But climate change is a problem that cuts across boundaries and borders. You cannot sit in Ghana and say, I'm doing climate change, not mindful of what is happening in Cote d'Ivoire or in Togo or in Nigeria or Burkina. So common sense tells us that, look, it is the actions of people who may or may not be in our territory that we've got to think about. So let's do the research together. Let's do the research together. And so when we go to any foundation, let's say Open Societies Foundation, and say we want money to do research, we are a group of 20 universities who want to do research that is of interest to Africa in climate change. There's a much higher likelihood that they will give us the money. And that's exactly what we're doing. We come as a group. When I was doing fundraising, I would say buy one, get 20 free. So you give research money to ARUA. There are 20 universities that are going to benefit from the work that is going to be done. So if you take work in the, let's say, malaria vaccine research, there are many in all. So if you come to Legon, you find 1 or 2 people at Noguchi who have become experts in the malaria vaccine research. You go to Pretoria, you find one person. You go to Lagos, but everywhere you find one person. But these are all people who are linked to some research group in Europe. And so all the research that they are doing is driven by European funding and by European prerogatives. Once you bring these 20 or more researchers from Africa together, and these are the best malaria researchers in Africa, you brought them all together, they are a very formidable team. Nobody at WHO can overlook them because they are the best. And it's not only one person. They are coming as a group. They have a proposal to do clinical trials in over 20 different countries, which will yield a much better outcome than doing it, giving the money to London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine to go and do work in 3 countries. That's how we've sold Arua. And that's how Arua is working. And that has been good in terms of attracting funding from different places. Arua has 13 centers of excellence. And all these centers of excellence are designed to help drive research towards the SDGs. So whether it's in water, whether it's in climate change, and energy, renewable energy, that's the type of work that Arua is doing. I'm saying this because I want to encourage you. Even though UPSA does not belong to Arua, there's nothing that stops UPSA researchers from working with Arua universities. Arua is designed to ensure collaboration even with non-partners, non-members. And so you can. UG is a member, KNUST is a member, UCC is a member. It means working with people from these universities. And even if you want to, I know that in Ghana we are very territorial. UPSA would like to prove that, oh, we don't need Legon. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't kill you, it doesn't take away from your stature if you work with researchers at Legon. When we go into a grantsmanship, I will show you exactly why it pays to work with somebody at Legon. I already received over 20 million pounds of seed money to do work, and that's how these, what do you call it, centers have been working. The GCRF fund is a UK government facility. Now it's no longer there. It's with COVID, it was scrapped. But I don't know, many of you would have experienced the situation of somebody coming from a UK university and saying that I'm applying for this grant or applying for that grant. Will you partner with me? Have you had that experience? You haven't? Yeah, but it's going to happen. I mean, if you haven't, it will happen because many more funders, including governments in Europe, are telling the researchers, we will only support you if you have a partner in Africa. We will only support you if you have a partner in Africa. So, in order to apply for those grants, they will come to lift this to come to Lagos all the time to solicit partnerships and so on. That is the way things have been. So we, as Arua, went and said, maybe it's time to change the format. Many of those coming to look for partners in Africa have set the research agenda already. The questions that they want to answer have already been determined by them. And so they come to Africa to simply come and find somebody who will do the legwork, do the data collection, and then later on, if they are lucky, their names will be added to the. We want to change that. We want to make it possible for African universities to apply to the UCRF UK government for funding for research in Africa, and where we will be the principal investigators also. And they gave us this 20 million pounds to do that. And through it, I know, at least in Legon, there were 2 people that applied for 2 million pounds to do research, and they got the grant, having found somebody from Liverpool University to be their partner. So they decided what they wanted to do for their research, what kind of questions they wanted answered, what kind of output they wanted to achieve, how much it's going to cost, and then went to Liverpool and said to somebody there, we have money to do this. Would you partner with us? So we have sort of turned the tables around. Instead of they coming to you, you go to them. Today, that model is being propagated all over the place. The European Union, I'll talk about that later, is very, very interested in the model, which we put out there. But of course, it means that you must have African scientists who are courageous, who are ambitious, who are knowledgeable, very talented, to be able to compete. You want £2 million to do work on African cities. It's a lot of money, but it's not too much money. If this university, UPSA, you even got 3 people who could apply meaningfully for £2 million grants. So they get £2 million every year for 5 years. Can you imagine what you do to this university? What will happen here? What will happen? It will change. It can change the university. It can change the university. That's how universities begin. So you are targeting amounts that will come consistently and will lead to publications and output that everybody can see. And the students, because governments are quoting the work that you've done. Students are citing it. Researchers everywhere in the world are citing it from the £2 million that was given to you. When you've done that, and the funders have seen what you did with the £2 million, next time when they ask for £5 million, they know that you know how to use £2 million, so you can do £5 million. That's how researchers around the world have grown. That's how researchers around the world have grown. If you sit there waiting for someone to come to you and say, take £2 million to go and do research, it won't happen. It will never happen. It is you who has to make the case that give me 1 million, give me 2 million, and give the evidence that you can use it. And I'll talk to you about how you can do that. So I give the examples of how ARUA have been working with many different partnerships, many different groups in order to improve the landscape for researchers. One thing that I'm very, very happy about is the Early Career Researcher Program. So you can be at Legon, you are a 33-year-old lecturer, you've been given large classes to teach, and you teach, and you teach. You don't have time to do research. What we do is you apply for a grant, we give you 1 year. We take leave or absence from your university or sabbatical if you are deserving of it. And you go and sit in Pretoria or sit in Cape Town, 1 year, no teaching. Just publish 2 articles. Publish 2 articles in a high impact journal or high impact journals. Just 2. We'll pay you for doing that. After 1 year of no teaching, if you can't do that, then you have a bigger problem than that. I know that for many of the women, when you give them the grant, then you come and say, what about my husband and children? We are thinking about ways in which, but for now, when we are giving you the grant, we have struggled hard to get the small money that we are giving you. And now we have to go and look after your husband and I'm sure once you've done the husband and children, then what about the nanny? So, ladies, if you have ways, if you have ideas about how we can solve this particular problem, I'll be very happy to listen to them. One of the things I'm very happy about with the ARUA initiative is how we have worked with the Guild of European Research-Intensive Universities and created what we call the clusters of research excellence. There are now 21 of them. And each of these clusters basically brings African and European researchers together. And they are applying for grants. They are applying for grants largely from the European Union, what they call the Erasmus funding and the other forms of funding that are available at the European Union. Apply for a grant from the European Union is a very, very, very difficult thing to do. But it's also one of the most rewarding because they give the largest grants. The largest grants that allow you to put up buildings, the largest grants that allow you to construct things and buy equipment and so on. So it's worth it. And I would strongly encourage you as a university to find somebody who can help you navigate the difficulties of getting a European Union grant. Getting these consistently can change the face of your university. Obviously, we've been talking about how difficult it is to get these international grants. We've got to think about what can we do? What can we do as a nation? What can we do to promote this? So we talk about the need for national research funds or national. In the whole of Africa, there's only one that works very, very well in South Africa. They have what they call the National Research Foundation. And the NRF has been very, very effective. Everybody doing PhD in South Africa, the funding is coming from the NRF. Every young researcher doing research, the funding is coming from the NRF. They have all these research chairs that have been established at universities. It works. And it's something that Ghana can learn from. In Ghana, we've talked about having a national research fund. We have been talking about it for more than 10 years. Government says, yes, we will do it. And yet, I understand that there's a tussle between the Ministry of Education and then Environment, Science and Technology. Who cares? At the end of the day, it's about research funding. So it's important for you as academics to put pressure on the government to institute the National Research Fund and make it an independent body, not one that is subject to the politics of this country. The research has no political color. The research has no ministerial color. We want, as academics, to have access to a national source of funding that allows us to do work on health and migration, food, etc. We want to do that. Whether Ghanaians can have access to good food or not should not be something that is driven by bureaucracy. So we need to do that. The second point here is about strengthening offices for institutional advancement. Universities must raise funds for research. I don't know how UPSA are doing it. Are you raising funds for research? Do you have an office that is responsible for raising funds? Ivy, is that what you do?
We don't have one yet, but we're in the process.
Yeah, okay. It's very, very important. Why is it important? Because raising funds for research and managing those funds, if you go elsewhere, is a completely professional activity. It's a professional activity. Just imagine that you've been given a £2 million grant by the UK government. You've been given £2 million to do research. If there's no professional backing for what you are doing the field work, you are doing all the analysis, you are writing reports, your scientific reports. You are also every 6 months sending a report to the UK government or whoever gave you the grant on how the money is being used. When people want money for transport, they come to you. You have to account for it. When people want their honorarium, they come to you. You have to account for it. We found that more and more African researchers were spending more of their time on managing the grants than actually doing the research. So that's why it's important to have offices that have professionals that know how to raise the funds and manage the funds so that the scientist is left to do the research. My experience with this, however, is that we all know how good it should be, but in Ghana, it has not always been good. As soon as you create the research office, then it becomes a new bureaucracy. It becomes a new bureaucracy. So you've gone and brought the £2 million. When you want to go and collect £10,000 for field work, and they give you long forms to fill. The form you are filling is even longer than the report you are going to write. And then you bring it, and then some province has to decide whether the money should be, and then when you fill all these things, so we don't even have dollars to give you, we don't have pounds to give you. So it creates tension between researchers and the managers. It's something that you want to avoid. By all means, have a good office in place, but don't create new bureaucracies that will slow down the process. That's the point I want to make over here. So let's professionalize. Let's professionalize the fundraising. Let's professionalize the management of these funds. When the European Union knows that you have a very capable office that will be able to manage 3 million euros, they are then encouraged to give you the 3 million euros. But if they are going to give you 3 million euros and nobody is going to account for it, they ask the director of finance, he says, ask the researchers. The other researchers say, no, but the province was in charge. These days, nobody works like that. A university must be accountable. A university, if you take anybody's money, whether it's $10,000 or 3 million euros, you have to account for it. And it should not be the responsibility of the scientist or the researcher to do the accounting. The university must be willing and ready to do that. I spoke about the diaspora earlier, or the brain drain, and I linked it to the diaspora. Under Carnegie support, that's what they call the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program, and which is a very, very good example of how you can bring people together, even in the diaspora, to be able to offer support. There are Ghanaians who live in the US, part of this arrangement, that spend time in partnering with people like Legon and Winneba and so on, to do things. And that's a very effective way of using the diaspora. Today, there are many Africans, very rich and support or can support research. They don't always do it. They are happier to be seen to be given funds to Harvard and Yale or Stanford than giving the money to UPSA. So, how does UPSA position itself to be an attractive beneficiary from Dangote or from MTN Foundation or something? These are things that your professionals involved in research management need to think about and plan how to take advantage of. In the past, we are not seeing much from these African philanthropists, but through pressure that we've given them, they are beginning to think about these things. So that's why you hear about Tony Elumelu and others putting support in these areas. The African Union doesn't have any resources of its own that it puts up for research, but they can be a very, very strong interlocutor in ensuring that African universities do. But it will come from building strong coalitions, being part of networks and so on, that can put this pressure on the African Union. So the African Union can tell the European Union that we are very supportive of work in this area or in that area. That's how you work. So the bottom line for me in all of this is that universities need to engage in a lot of networking. Engaging in networking. So you, the individual researcher, must be a strong networker. Your university also must be a strong networking organization. That's how the world of research has become. There's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of money out there. But with time, becoming more and more difficult. The requirements that you need to meet in order to get the money, those requirements are becoming more and more difficult. And the only way to go around them is come in networks, in partnerships, with strong partners. I hope you understand me. If you go as a UPSA, you alone, giving you money is not exciting, especially if there's no evidence of a strong track record. But building a strong coalition allows you to influence your government, allows you to influence the African Union or the ECOWAS and so on, and allows you to have an international voice. That voice is very, very crucial in all of this.
Much for your presentation. I realized that most of what you discussed was with regards to the science department. And I know quite a number of people who are in that field, and they get quite a number of grants. But I'm in the legal department, and I don't know if the grants come our way that much, or it's more difficult to get a grant when you're in the humanities and the arts. Thank you.
I know that for the social sciences and humanities, it's a lot more difficult because there are fewer funders. 85% of all research funding coming to Africa is going into health research. And the health research, about 80% of it is for infections. I hope you understand. The reason being that these are the things that we see to be killing us. We are all worried about COVID, and we are worried about various infections. So the world puts more and more money into them. We are only now making a stronger case for other social sciences and humanities. But we also, so it's not peculiar to Africa, it's around the whole world. Social sciences, humanities get far less money than others. The way around it is to form interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary teams. You see? So if you're a lawyer in Ghana and you are interested in research, nobody is going to give you grants to go and do something to criminal law. How many people in the whole world do criminal law research? You have to have plenty money or some specialized system for that. But if you are doing research more as a social scientist, work with other social scientists into the kind of things that lead to criminality and so on, as a social scientist, or with others and so on, it becomes a more attractive and viable option. So one thing I always preach is think beyond your own discipline. Think about who and who you can bring together to work on an interdisciplinary theme while mindful of your own disciplinary contribution. As a lawyer, you want to publish in good legal journals. Also, that's where you'll be seen as contributing to your discipline. So you work with others in a manner that allows you to publish in good legal journals. There are legal journals that will only take things that have been done in a very, very strict law environment. And there are others that are more interdisciplinary. So you make a choice. You make, in this our environment, if you decide that you want to stick strictly to only the pure legal things, but you will not get any funding anyway. and you will not be able to publish much, and you can't make much impact. But once you open up and you work with others, you find that you are using your law to influence what they do, as you also allow them to influence what you do. So that's how many people I know in the legal profession around universities in the world have done their work. As opposed to say, here for me, I'm a lawyer. The world has changed, or it's still changing.
Thank you very much. I think that your presentation has been very insightful. My name is Akosi Safo, and I'm a lecturer at UPSA. I'm just fascinated.
Which area?
Marketing.
Marketing.
At the initial stages of your presentation, you made mention of research and its impact on national development. And I think that should be the major matrix in evaluating the relevance of research. So I'm just curious, and I don't know whether it's something that the organization that you helped informing, the ARUA, is probably thinking about. I want to look at ARUA university rankings and research. Are there some things that you have thought of doing in terms of looking at the relevance of research to national development when universities are ranked? Because if, like you said, because of the sources of research funds, sometimes relevance in our context may probably not be reflected. Are there some things that you are doing so that universities will be encouraged to direct the research that they do when they are looking for funding, so that at the end of the day, there will be impact on national development? So that, for example, the UCC recent rankings, is it possible that we can have a situation where you will say that maybe 50% of the research directly impacted on the Ghanaian economy or national development, so that everybody will know it doesn't become just rankings, but people will begin to see that indeed these institutions are contributing to national development? That's my thoughts, and probably maybe I would want you to address them. Thank you.
I didn't use the word relevance, but I said about impacting our communities. Impacting our community. How do we ensure that African research is impacting? That's making it relevant. That's what it is. But we go beyond that. We go beyond that and say we want to achieve both rigor and relevance. There are people who think that when research is rigorously done, then by default it overlooks relevance. It shouldn't be. So you can do good research that is relevant, rigorous research, which is also impactful through its relevance. If you live in an environment where everybody is complaining about the way, let's say, post-harvest losses as a result of storage, and how storage facilities are overwhelmed by insects that destroy maize or whatever, and you do research that is aimed at removing or minimizing the effect of these insects, clearly the relevance to your community is very high. But if you don't do it well, in a rigorous manner, in a manner that is acceptable to your peers around the world, no journal is going to publish it. No journal. So you can do work that the Ministry of Food and Agriculture can take it. Oh, yeah, we will. But that work will not be known. So nobody in Zambia or nobody in Malawi is going to replicate the research findings there for their purpose. What's the point you do research if only in your that is known. It is going to get better known if it has been published by a good enough journal. We know there are journals that are far more interested in the rigor than in relevance. And there are journals that focus only on relevance and don't attach much importance to rigor. Today, we are putting pressure on all of these to look at both rigor and relevance. And that's how, research having impact on national development is important, and there are various metrics that are being developed to achieve that. So it's not simply about how many things did you publish, or how many patents were published, and so on. You also look at how many policies were. That's a bit more difficult to identify, but there are metrics being developed where governments will have to show exactly what research led to a particular. In Ghana here, we have the LEAP, the Livelihoods Empowerment Against Poverty. It's a program where we spend quite a bit of money regularly. It's important that some research underlies it. Why are you giving these people money? Why not that group? How did you select a treatment group and a control group? These are important questions that only research can answer. So if you see governments doing social protection without any evidence or that it will work or that it works, there's a problem. And it is only through good research that you can show how LEAP can be improved. That is national development. So you must have the metrics that will allow you to show or prove that there has been some meaningful impact. And that is something that we are always working on and improving, developing.
And
who are you?
I'm Dr. Dove.
Dove?
Yes, please.
Yes, I know the face, but...
Thank you, sir. So I have this colleague in the UK who sent me grants opportunities from the British Academy. Unfortunately, the main applicant must be from the UK, with a partner from a select number of countries, including South Africa and Kenya, but no country in West Africa. How do we navigate around these issues?
There's a reason. It's a historical reason behind it. But those people are allowed to have partners in other African countries. So if there's somebody from Kenya, there's somebody from Kenya or from South Africa that you are working with, becomes possible or easier. By all of this, we are working with the UK institutions to change. We are working with them to change these requirements. So just as we do with the GCRF, all of these things will change. But they will change if we are able to show that there's a growing number of good researchers, well-motivated researchers. You see, about a month ago, University World News, I don't know if you read University World News, they wrote a story about, we had gone, as a rule, putting pressure on them to give more grants to Africans and provide more facilities for Africans. They published a story that about, I've forgotten the percentage, I think 75% of all the grants that are available, which are open to Africans, have gone unutilized. You know, so we must show that there's a strong research culture emerging, where people are dying to do research. And therefore, if you put the funds out there, they will be utilized. And then it makes it easier to put pressure on the UK government, on the British Academy and others to change the way they do things.
I know someone who is in the science department. They get a lot of grants. They work hard. But I realized that for one particular grant they even got, the challenge was with the university, getting the money from the university, and it took up to a year. Meanwhile, they were still doing the work. I'm wondering what can ease this on the side of the researcher. Maybe is there a way that some of the money can be sent directly to you to do the work? Because I know that it's not all about the money, but I think it's a great incentive to research for most of us here. Yes, please.
It doesn't make any sense for a university to receive the grant and make the researchers take a whole year to get access to it for their research. It doesn't make any sense. And so it has to do with having an arrangement in place where the research community is able to pressurize the administration. At least unacceptable. It is unacceptable. If it took only a few months for the money to come from outside, why is it taking a year for you to disperse it? So it's for the community to say, look, we won't take it. I know in Legon, they had a similar problem. They had a similar problem with the Office for Research, Innovation and Development, where it was taking forever to get grants released. The paperwork was enormous. Things are beginning to change, largely because the researchers are complaining. And as they complain and they delay in delivering their outputs, it affects the image of the university. And it affects the ability to attract more grants. So it is in the interest of the university to ensure that these things work, that people who manage the grants are well trained. You see, in Ghana, when these new things happen or come, we like to immediately appoint people to places to go and do it without any training. Research management is a profession. It's a profession. It's not simply a new form of administration. No, it's a whole profession. You must know who funds what. You must know their requirements. You must know how reporting is done. You must know their formats that they use. And so that profession is very, very important to develop. And so I would not, if the money comes to you directly, then you, the researcher, becomes the one who must account for it. And accounting for it, depending on the size, can be quite time-consuming. You see.
The great insights you've shared with us this morning, Prof. I'm particularly pleased that you talked about the decolonization and the professionalization of research and research management. That's an area that I know that our Vice-Chancellor and the rest of leadership are very keen on fostering and ensuring that UPSA sets itself on the right path. Having talked about that and linking that to Lorinda's comments, I've been thinking the whole time that you were speaking, what are the key elements to look out for? Because you spoke about having access to greater opportunities and the bigger funding out there if we formed coalitions or consortiums. So what are the key elements to look out for, and how best can we leverage the use of coalitions?
Identify like-minded institutions. You are not far from Lagos. You are not far from Lagos. And I'm quite sure almost everybody in the room here has some friend or partner in the same area in Lagos. I am a strong advocate for these arrangements with neighbors. There's nothing wrong with UPSA and University of Ghana Business School partnering for a grant from the African Business Roundtable. There are things like the Conference of Africa Central Bank Governors. They provide support for research. A partnership involving the Economics Department, Business School, UPSA, for me, has a huge prospect once you identify an essential research question. So it calls for people being strategic. It calls for people being ambitious. It calls for people asking questions that everybody thinks about, but nobody has time to put on paper. That's how you do it. So coalitions, don't think, oh, Lagos big, we are small. Yeah, you are also individuals, and they are also individuals. And I find in my experience that people in a partnership who know each other works much, much better than people who are in a partnership because they've been forced to come together. So working with your friends, whether in Ghana or outside Ghana, is the best way to develop these networks. The first thing that I want you to think about as you begin to reflect on a career, and the first part of what we did this morning was to ignite your passion, motivate you to want to be interested in research, and how that research that you want to do fits into a bigger picture of national development or university development and personal development. So that big picture. And now, if you are interested in that, if you feel adequately motivated, some do's and don'ts. The first thing is for you to develop an interest in the research funding landscape. You have decided that you want to be a researcher. You have decided you want to do research in particular areas and so on. So you look at the funding landscape. Who does what? That's the first question. Who does what? And trying to do that, you want to understand the funding sources. You want to learn about the funding agency of interest, what their priorities are, what they used to do, what they've always done in terms of funding in your country and other places. Where is the funding most directed? Is it coming to Africa? Is it coming to Ghana? And then look out for calls. Now let me talk about all these things that I've said. In general, there are many different types of organizations that provide support for funding. Some of them provide support for funding individuals. So as an individual, you can apply, and depending on how good or how appropriate your proposal is, you can get funded. And then some fund institutions. They fund institutions. So they will give the money to an institution so that some individuals can do the research. So they don't deal directly with the researcher. They deal with the institutions. Let me give you an example of funding for research that goes to individuals. I'm quite sure many of you have heard of the African Economic Research Consortium, AERC, which is based in Nairobi. Currently, they provide support to individuals who want to do research. That's where I began my research from, the African Economic Research Consortium. It began in 1988, designed to support individual economists who are in any department of economics or research institute, whether in the ministries or the university and so on. So individuals wrote to apply for a grant, and then they received a grant to do their work. The money came to them directly, had nothing to do with their university. Why was that? Why was that happening? Why did they deal with individuals? And AERC is not the only one. There are many such organizations and networks around the region that do that. They do it because in the 70s, when grants always went to the universities to administer, sometimes the researchers never received the money. And even when the researchers received the money, the university could not account for the money. You know of IDRC, the International Development Research Council, based in Ottawa, Canada. IDRC is the best known or the most known funder of research in sub-Saharan Africa. IDRC used to give money to the University of Ghana, to KNUST, to UCC for research. The funniest example is that they gave the university money for research. At the end of 2 years, the research had not been done, and the university could not account for the money. Why? Because the researchers went to the university for the money to go and do their work. The university said there was no money, and so they didn't give anybody any money, and no work was done. What did the university do with the money? In the 70s, Ghana was hard, so you can imagine. So the university changed the Canadian dollars into cedis. I used it to pay salaries and pay various things. So the university was being run on the research funds, not just from IDRC, but from Ford Foundation, from Rockefeller Foundation, and so on. That's how these organizations learned that supporting research in Africa in the 70s was a wasteful listen. You are going to support salaries. You are going to support the lifestyle of vice-chancellors. You are going to support things that have not been planned for. And so they decided that instead of giving the money to the university, let's give it to the individuals. That's how a new culture of supporting individuals has. But we learned from the ARC experience. In almost every African economics department, through the 80s and 90s, 2000s, when you go there, you will find a new group of very affluent researchers. You will find researchers that are, like me, have become better known as individuals. They've published extensively. They are well networked and so on. But the departments that they belong to, the departments are suffering. Or the institute that they belong to, the institutes are suffering. And so it raised a new question. Should we support the individual, or should we support the institute or department or the university? That is a challenge that became very, very obvious through the 90s. And then today, we have struggled to find a middle ground. So you find both. Or even when individuals are being supported, there's also some grant part to go to listen. That's how people are. So there are grants that go to individuals and then grants that go to institutions. What universities need to do is to work on this new terrain. How much support and encouragement do we give to our individuals to pursue those individual grants? By all means, it is good. It is good that your economics department, it is good that your UPSA, it is good that your business school is growing. And I'm very, very certain that most of you know the University of Ghana Business School. Without the AERC grant to individuals, the business school that you see there today would not have been that. You didn't have funded like that. Many are those who benefited as individuals from it. And through those networks that were established, they were then able to go on and apply for bigger grants that have helped to make the business school, have helped to make the economics department, have helped to make UPSA what they are today. It didn't just happen. People very consciously motivated the change and so on. So you've got to look out for calls. There are some institutions that issue calls regularly, like IDRC, like the foundations. They issue calls, sometimes every 6 months, sometimes every once a year, sometimes every 3 months. They issue calls. So if you are a good researcher, highly motivated research, you look out for these calls. When is the next IDRC call coming out? When is the next Rockefeller Foundation call coming out? When is the next Ford Foundation call coming out? You look out for these. And then so which ones are directed at Africans? What are the priority areas? So, madam, you are in law. There's one foundation that is known for supporting the work of the humanities, including law. That's the Mellon Foundation. That's the Mellon Foundation. It's if you are in the arts and so on, law. So if you were looking for something, something as a lawyer, don't waste your time with, let's say, IDRC, because they are more interested in the social sciences, unless you want to do law and the social sciences. You get me? But the Mellon Foundation is designed for the arts and humanities. They have other interests also. Every year, they have an indication of what their priorities are going to be for the year or for the 5 years. They usually do it for 5 years. So these are things that you look out for and you specialize in them, you see. Now, so like I said, each organization, when they issue a call, they will tell you what the guidelines are, and you'll find on their website what the guidelines are. They'll tell you how they're going to assess your application. What are the criteria they are going to use for assessing the application? There are some that will emphasize rigor. There are others that will talk about relevance. And there are some that will emphasize both rigor and relevance. So it's for you to know which organization best suits your ambitions, which organization is the most appropriate for your the kind of work that you want to do. In the next this slide here, I provide some of the best known organizations that have supported or do support work in Africa. So this is between 2015 and 2023. So the NRF in South Africa, why is it the leading one? It's the leading one because the government of South Africa uses that to support all the work that is being done by their PhD students, some of the master students, some of the young lecturers, and the researchers and so on. So they are funding far more work in South Africa. And now, people like me are trying to put pressure on them to look beyond South Africa. I took part in an evaluation of the NRF, and the main recommendation I made was start thinking about how your South African researchers are working with other Africans. If you want to be seen as leaders in Africa, then you must work with other Africans. You cannot be a leader without followers. So that's what is going to happen. We work quite closely with them, and they will not fund you sitting in Ghana. But if you were to partner with somebody in South Africa, you can easily get a grant from them. Then we have UKRI, which the UKRI is the one that gave the Arua the £20 million. It's a main UK government entity for supporting development research. So it's with the COVID and the collapse of the UK economy, their funding also went down. You may remember that the UK had a policy of devoting 0.7% of its gross national product on development aid, which included the research. So there was a lot of funding. At the time Arua came, there was a lot of money because of this 0.7% agreement. That has been reduced. Today is around, it's less than 0.5, and which has impacted considerably resources going to developing countries. Then we have the U.S. Department for Health and Human Services, the NIH. The NIH is one of the best known for the scientists. Your husband, for example, I know benefits a lot from NIH support. These are, so if, as a social scientist, or you want to benefit from NIH, you partner with a scientist to do work in the areas that are interdisciplinary. So many of the health issues that are of interest to medical researchers have some social science bearing. And that's where, if I was a young researcher today, that's what I'll be targeting. How do I partner with a microbiologist? How do I partner with an infectious disease expert to raise funds? So you've seen this list here. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is easily one of the largest private entities that you will find over there. IDRC is over there. And then you get others all listed here. Many of these are focusing on the sciences, but many of them also allow for multidisciplinary research. Let me see. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, for example, they have been for a number of years the largest non-governmental provider of research funding in Africa. They provide support for a lot of the agricultural research that you see here. A lot of the work that is being done by Accra for the Green Revolution in Africa is paid for by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So if you are here and you are interested in working in agriculture, not necessarily agronomy or plant breeding or something, but the social side of it is fairly easy to work with people in this particular area. This is the list of institutions that have supported work in Ghana. So if you're looking for people that are supporting work in Ghana, so you will find that the Wellcome Trust is the fifth one here. The Wellcome Trust is based in the UK, and it's easily the largest funder outside of the UK government from the UK, supporting work in the health area. But in their last call that they issued, in their last call that the Wellcome Trust issued, it made a very, very specific provision for interdisciplinary work, meaning that all the scientists that want to do the work with them will have to show how they are working with others, other disciplines. One area that they had a strong interest in was climate change. Climate change. So how do you bring social scientists into climate change for health? When climate change is experienced in any part of the world, one area in which it affects people the most is their health. Is their health. And it is people and their health. Once their health is compromised, their productivity is also affected. And so people behave differently as a result of climate change. As a result of climate change, so if you go to places that are going through what they call droughts or floods and so on, as a result of the seasonal characteristics change that have taken place, their behaviors too have changed. And their behaviors have an effect on the economy. So it provides an opportunity for economists to study how are these countries, how are these economies responding to climate change. So it's not simply a matter for the health scientists or for soil scientists and so on, but there are opportunities. So you might be at UPSA, so as far as we do marketing, we do business and finance and so on. But there are opportunities for you to look beyond these. I hope you understand me. Think about climate change and then how it is going to affect businesses in Ghana and how businesses will have to adapt to climate change. That needs to be researched. That's a huge opportunity for you. So, here's some good practices. Clearly define your research questions. The research questions that you are going to answer, you seek to answer must be clearly defined. One of the things I used to have a lot of interest in when I was a young researcher, so I'm applying for a grant from AERC. There are another 100 people applying for similar grants. So and I know that every year they will give out only about 35 grants. So mine has to be one of the 35. I can't say I'm going to do what everybody else is doing. Everybody else wants to do work on exchange rates. Everybody wants to do work on terms of trade. Everybody wants to do work on labor markets. I want to be different. I want to offer the people something that they don't see every day. So I choose informal finance. And all the economy, the whole Africa those days, I think we're only about 2 or 3 who are doing work in this area. So, and you make it exciting, you make it different, you make it look like, hey, how come we didn't know this before? That's how you sell your ideas. Be different. Ask questions that nobody is asking. Provide answers that nobody has answered before. See? So that's one thing. So it might be clear, it might be concise, it might be significant in addressing a knowledge gap. Very often, we write proposals and say, oh, they didn't show any interest. Because what you are saying is not new. What you want to do is not new. They have seen it many, many, many times before. So today we are talking about climate change. Today we are talking about migration. Today we are talking about infectious diseases. What can you say about these things that nobody has said before? Probably nothing. But you can give it a twist that only you can give it. Only you understand it, that only you have seen it. Only you have seen it. And so you make your experience count. Your research questions must be a reflection of your daily lived experience. During the break, I was telling some colleagues that my work on informal finance came as a result of what I had observed as a child at the Tuesday market in Kolegoro. Do you know the Tuesday market? Have you heard of the Tuesday market before? You've heard of the Tuesday market? Why you are too young to know the Tuesday market? I saw these Susu collectors with their bags. You saw them at Kaneshie market. You saw them at Makola. And you saw what they did. So nobody could tell me that they had no impact at all on banking in Ghana. So that's what forced me to. And when I was telling that story, at the World Bank, they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that people who actually pay money to save. If you grow up in a place like Olegon, like me, it is not anything unusual that the Susu collector comes, takes your money, and then at the end of the month, they will bring your money back to you. If you think of it, you are paying money to somebody so that you can save with the person. But when you go to the bank, they take your money so that they keep your money for it also. So it became some kind of paradox in economics. Why would people pay money to go and save? That's how so I was asking a question that everybody was just overlooking, and economists had not thought about. That's how, by asking a very unusual question and finding answers to that question, I made a big difference. So you too, what question are you going to ask? What have you seen in Accra, in Medina, around you here in UPSA? What have you seen as a marketing expert? What have you seen as a researcher in business, in law, that you think you can make it appear different from what everybody else is talking about? That's something that only you, as a researcher, can think about. A strong proposal, well-structured, with objectives, methodology. These are standard. They are standard, but important. If they are not there, and they've not been written in a manner that is forceful, you can overlook them. The difference between a good proposal, I evaluate proposals all the time for different organizations. And one thing that will always will always come to me. Is this person making a compelling case? Is this person forcing me to believe what he or she is saying? If you are saying something that everybody says all the time, you are giving me a methodology that I find in every paper that I read. Why you? Are you different from the others? So why should I give you the money, not the other person? Show me something that is different. So your methodology, yes, shows that you are willing to modify some, even though you are going to do field work in Begro, like many other people who have done field work. Show me that when you go to Begro, you will do your field work in a different manner. The way you are going to select the household that you are going to interview will be different from the others. So it's not simply saying that we'll go to Begro and we'll do field work. Show that yours is different. That's how you catch the attention of the reviewer. It's the reviewer who is going to tell the person, yes, he or she knows what she's doing. The proposal, when you read it, must make you believe that this person knows what he wants to do, what she wants to do. If you read a proposal that is clearly a very standard proposal that anybody can close his or her eyes and write, nobody. But when you read it, and the person is talking about the area, and you can see that the person really knows the area. He didn't go and take it from some student's master's thesis. That the person really knows the area and understands the problem and is trying very hard to use proper scientific methods to analyze the problem. Yes, then you say, okay, fine, let's take a chance. Every time you fund a project, you are taking a chance. You are taking a chance that the thing they're going to fund is going to yield results, good results. Engage collaborators. Where possible, involve co-investigators and collaborators whose expertise strengthens your proposal. That's, for me, a very, very important thing. For me, a very, very important thing. Engaging collaborators. You, at UPSA, you've never applied for a grant from IDRC. When your proposal goes to IDRC, there's a very high likelihood that they will give it to somebody from Ghana to review and say, this is a good proposal, it can be done. The person that is going to review it went to Legon. The person went to KNUST. The person went to UCC. The person looks at it and says, oh, I don't know him. They look at your CV, but there's no evidence that he or she has done something like this before. There's no evidence. The CV doesn't show it. The CV shows that the person was employed at the UPSA in 2015. And since 2015, there's no evidence of a grant and so on. And so, well, okay, let's read it. So you are reading it already biased. You are already biased that this person is at UPSA. And the UPSA has no research track record. Now, how do you deal with that as a researcher from UPSA? So you are partnering with somebody from Legon. You are partnering with somebody from KNUST. That's a way to take away that bias. That's a way to take away the bias that is weighed against you. So because he or she sees that you have a partner from Legon, well, okay, let's see. Then you have this your so that compelling case is now being read with more open mind. That's how you make your case. But if you say, oh, I don't need anybody from Legon, of course you can take it, but the bias will work against you. That's how the world is. You don't have. That's how the world is. We show bias in many different. We always think it's white men and women who show bias against us because we are Africans. We do it to ourselves too. We show ethnic bias, don't we? We show religious bias. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but that's how life is. I cannot pretend that I'm a white man. I'm a black man, and I know how the world is structured against me. It is my responsibility to deal with the world and show the world that I can do it. Whether I'm a black man or a white man, I can do it. Whether I'm at UPSA or I'm at UEW, I can do it. And this is how, so give me a chance. Read my proposal. My friend is at Legon, so we did it together. Read it. And then they will read it, and then they'll give you a chance. The next time you are going, you don't need your friend from Legon. Maybe now you go and take a friend from UHAS, and then you are the leader. And then because you have a track record, then they say, well, hey, she did that one before, so she can do it. That's how research is done. Nobody was born a researcher. So you become one by investing in yourself or by your institution investing in you. It is beneficial to underscore how the research benefits society and contributes to the field or addresses pressing issues. That's very, very important. One of the things they always look for is how does this work benefit society? That was the question that our colleague was asking earlier. How does this work benefit society? If you apply for any UK government grant, one of the key things you'll be asked to address is to show how it answers a question that benefits wider society. So if it's something that is seen to yield only a private gain to you, nobody is going to pay much attention to it. So, and then you must have a realistic budget. You must have a realistic budget. Quite often, when we hear that this organization, they give grants from 1 million to 5 million, even though the work that is being proposed will cost less than the 1 million, we feel obliged to have a budget, So you have a small project, but you have a budget that way exceeds what you require to execute it. The people who are reviewing it, they are usually very, very experienced researchers. If you say you're going to do field work in Medina, or you're going to do field work in Odan, you're going to do field work in Tamale, they have a fair idea of what it costs to do the field work in Tamale. They do. They know how much it costs to spend a night in a hotel in Tamale. They know how much it costs to travel, rent a bus, and go to Tamale with field assistant and so on. So when you come and you have a budget that exceeds that, clearly, and if your project is that expensive, there are others who want to do similar things as you who are going to charge far less. So maybe they will show preference for them. We talk about the need for minimizing errors. One thing that I find very, very useful in putting together a proposal, don't deal with it alone. Make sure that others know and read and can comment. One of the things I used to insist on at ISA when I was director was if you write a proposal, before you send it out, do a seminar. Do a seminar at the institute, and then we bring your peers around. They hear you, and they can critique what you are proposing to do. And you use the critique to go and improve it before you send it out. And for me, it was a very, very, very good thing. It helped me personally, and I believe it helped many of my younger colleagues. I know that in Ghana, once you get a PhD, you think you are the smartest human being God created. And so the last thing you want is to show your work to colleagues and let them tell you that they would have done it differently. Nobody is really beyond criticism. Nobody is beyond correction. there will be something by all means in your proposal that you may have overlooked or that you thought was not important, but others think is important. So there's nothing wrong with changing. If others think it's important, then it is important. You see, at least take the chance to think about it. Take time to think about it if others think it's important. Or something that you have spent about 2-3 pages on, everybody thinks it's not important. Only you think it's important. If everybody thinks it's not important, think about it again. Maybe either you reduce it from 3 pages to half a page or you throw it away. It's up to you. But that's what criticisms from colleagues would lead to. They help you to have a much better proposal. When I used to go to ARC as a researcher, I found that many of the things that my colleagues would say to me at a departmental seminar are the same things that people tell me when I went to Nairobi, or whenever I received the reviewers' comments. It was the same things. So if you listen to your colleagues before, you would go and avoid the embarrassment of outside. Work with deadlines. I told you earlier on about these calls. Each call that comes will say that all applications must be in before 30th September or 31st December or whatever. It's not like, they are not negotiable. They are not negotiable. There are thousands of people who are looking for these grants. And so if yours is delayed, don't worry, there are over 999 others that have been received. So try and work within these deadlines and stop. And the Ghanaians think we can negotiate everything. When you're a Ghanaian, everything you think can be negotiated. Everything, if I smile, they would even look at your face or give you a chance to smile. You are dealing with a machine. When you're dealing with a machine, there's no opportunity to negotiate. So we have to get used to that. Get used to that there's no room for negotiation. And I've already talked about the openness to critique. Once you submit your proposal, they will come back with suggestions. I haven't seen, in my whole experience, any proposal that has gone and come back with no revisions required. I haven't seen any. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are people who are so good that their proposals go. But on average, there will be some revisions to be made. When they come, accept them in good faith. Because we think we are so good, when somebody tells us what to change, then we get annoyed. I used to be an editor of a journal based at Oxford University. I was one of 4 managing editors. So there are 2 of us Africans and 2 non-Africans. We received articles from all over the world on Africa. And some of the authors were Africans, and some were Americans, Europeans, and so on. About 95% of all manuscripts that we received, after going through the refereeing process, will be sent back to the author or authors for revision. In 70% of the African cases, they never came back. In 70% of the African cases, they never came back. It means if you told an African academic that your article has been received, it has been reviewed, and then you give a list of the changes that need to be made, in 70% of the cases, they won't come back. You understand it? You know what happens? In those days, you didn't have all these predatory journals that people were using today. They didn't come back because they are too annoyed. After I was spending all my time doing this work, and then, how dare you tell me I should go and improve it? You know, as if you are the only person who went to university. That's the African problem. We are not humble. We are not modest, especially when we think you walk around, everybody say, oh, Prof, Prof, oh, Prof. You say, you think you know everything. No, you don't know everything. There's some small boy sitting somewhere who's telling you, go and revise. You swallow your pride and revise. Because you are anxious to publish in that journal. But because publishing in that journal does not mean too much to us, we either throw it away or go and look for some other outlets. That has been the African problem. The same thing with proposals. You give an African, oh, change this, change that, change this. Can you prove this? Then they get annoyed, throw it away. It's something that we have to change. If we strongly believe in a proper research culture, we got to change that and think about revisions. Things to avoid. Don't overlook the eligibility criteria. You know, whenever a call is issued, they tell you who and who are eligible. If they say you must be a resident in Africa, then be resident in Africa. If they say you must be at a university, be at a university. If they say you must be 35 years old or less, then make sure that, so you must be in a particular discipline, you must work with people from other disciplines. Yes, you have to comply with all of these things. The other thing is, don't undersell your work. Don't undersell your work. I said earlier, it is your responsibility to make a compelling case. Making a compelling case does not mean be boastful. It does not mean say, I did this and I did that, and that's not, who cares? But make the person reading believe that only you can do this. You see, how do you do it? How do you make somebody believe that only you can do this work without saying, only me? You don't say it, but the person reading it feels it. How do you do it? Chief, I see you nodding. How will you do it?
Before I answer, it struck me because one thing I learned in research is oftentimes as we write, we say to fill this gap. This is the gap. But you could demonstrate the gap without using the word the gap. Okay? By letting the reader understand the findings in the field, what researchers may have paid attention to, what they might have ignored, for which reason you want to look at. Automatically, it's also a gap you are filling. Okay, so therefore, the essence, like you mentioned, your problematization should be relevant, timely. Like we talk about research problems, if it's not resolved, what will happen? Okay, so in other words, you are trying to demonstrate that all other resources all other channels should be kept on hold only for this one. So it's about how you demonstrate in the writing. And one thing I also learned is that we have to be as humble as possible. And sometimes you may have to hedge, not to be too straightforward with some of your utterances. But the main thing is the write-up. The write-up flowing like a story, carrying the reader along with you. By the time you get to the conclusion, the reader may have fallen for you because of the way you write it, not necessarily saying it. So the writing should always carry the reader along and influence the reader unknowingly. That's what I can say.
Undersell your work, and don't ignore page limits. We like writing using very verbose language, writing, filling paper, plenty. These days, when you go online to complete these applications, there's very, very limited space anyway. So the more you write, the less opportunity you have to say the real things that need to be said. So pay attention to that. Avoid the use of jargon. You don't find much of that in the social sciences and humanities. But in the sciences, people like to write as if they invented the scientific language. A reason why you need to avoid too much use of jargon, is that many of the people who are reviewing the application may not necessarily be in your area. The fact that you are a medical researcher does not mean that only medical researchers are going to review your application. There may be one or two medical researchers who are looking at the technical side. But there are people who are economists, who are sociologists, who are also reviewing it. And they don't understand, so use language that they will understand because their votes matter. Whether they like it or not matters to the funder. That's why you must avoid the use of... don't forget compliance issues. Ethical considerations are important. IRB protocols are important. Compliance regulations related to your research are important. You say you're going to do field work. You have this very lengthy instrument that you want to use, about 100 pages. It's going to take at least 4 hours to administer. Which human being must stop all the work that they are doing, they are farming, or to sit down for you to ask them questions for 4 hours? You are abusing their rights, their human rights. It's an abuse of human rights. So how do you, in your proposal, show that you are going to have access to this information from those individuals in a manner that does not compromise their rights, in a manner that has not harassed them or demeaned them? There are protocols being in place today for you. Your university must show that there's an arrangement in place at your office that will take care of the protocols. Ethical considerations have been respected. The university must have a policy. This one is your work. The university must have a policy that reflects its respect for ethical considerations. Funders are happier with universities that are able to show their policies. Safeguarding is one such. What policies? You see, when we first heard about safeguarding policies in Europe and so on, we used to laugh, for this one, we Africans, we don't. Today, if you don't have them, nobody will mind you. And I said earlier on that there are grants that go to institutions, and every institution, when you apply for a grant for the institution, they will ask you for your safeguarding policy. How do you, what agreement do you have in place to promote gender? What are you doing to ensure that women researchers are not unduly hindered from pursuing their research? Don't underestimate the significance of networking. I've talked about that already. Don't rush the proposal. Don't wait until the last minute before you put in the proposal. Don't ignore the evaluation criteria. As I said in my earlier lesson, the various funders all tell you what is important in the assessment. They will tell you. They will tell you that where you are located is important. They will tell you that gender is important. They will tell you that age is important. I mean, all of those things are there. And they will tell you, if you are lucky, the points they give for each of these. So you pay attention to them. You pay attention to these and make sure that you have complied with them. Generic templates. Most institutions have their own templates. Most institutions have their own. So whether it is Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Carnegie Corporation, and so on, they all have their templates. And it is for you to ensure that your submission complies with their template. Don't go and use a standard one, because if it does, it will not fit. If it does not fit, nobody will look at it. And I say, don't take rejections personally. So you think that Galamsey is a problem, and you want to do research on Galamsey, and you've taken your time, spent a bit of money, you're going to Takwa to go and look at the place and then write a nice proposal. And then you send that proposal to funders. Sometimes you are not lucky and you find some frustrated academic who is made your reviewer. and he or she pours all the frustration that is in them on you, using language that you probably are not used to. When you receive it, upon first reading, you feel like you have been insulted. Upon second, you are beginning to feel hopeless. Yeah, that the baby are betraying actually inquisition. So you are there. You are taking it personally. You are taking, I see the man doesn't know you, or the woman doesn't know you. So it's not a personal thing. It is how he or she feels about what you wrote. It's inevitable that you take some of it personally because you wrote it anyway. It's inevitable. But don't take it too personally. Just go back and maybe leave it lying there for about 2-3 days if you have the time. Leave it lying there, and then all the time whenever you are eating, you are thinking and so on. After 3 days, you will begin to understand where the person has come from. And because you've taken away, or you've taken out of it the personal element, and you are looking at it technically, you begin to understand. And once you begin to understand, you can do a much better or much improved proposal. That's one way to look at it. Every Ghanaian or African that you say, oh, I don't agree with you, they feel very dejected. They think that you don't respect them. I saw about this. They don't know you anyway, so if they knew you, then if you were in this university and you apply for a grant, and it was given to you, your next door neighbor to review, and then the next door neighbor is reviewing it and thinking about all the time you've insulted him and so on, then you have a right to feel that when they gave you the next door, you have to say, no, I beg you, I've insulted the man, I've insulted him enough. There's no way he can do justice to my proposal. And so I beg you, don't give it to him. Let's find somebody else to give to. If you are lucky, they may find somebody, but the world doesn't work like that. So don't take it too personally. I think these are about the things I wanted to talk about. I want to end by saying that as a university, you need to enter into a social contract. Think about what you can do for the society, what you can do for Ghana. You are not doing research so that people can be promoted. You are not doing research so that you can be higher ranked. You are not doing research in order to gain the respect of people. I'm not saying they are not important, but that's not the primary reason. The primary reason for doing the research is that you are part of our society, and you are a public institution. The government expects you to solve problems. That's what universities are for. So by the social contract, you are doing something that will benefit and impact our society. You can do this through high quality research that is targeting the challenges of our society. You don't do research because something occurred to you, even though you haven't convinced yourself about the importance of what occurred to you, to our society. You want to do research because there's money. Think about the impact. There's huge potential in this region, given what has been accomplished, even within the limited resources. We've seen the growth. I showed you the graph, so you saw the growth. A lot needs to be done. But a lot has been done already, but a lot more needs to be done. The potential is huge. Think about all the young men and women that have assembled here or are in this university. Many of them with PhDs, many of them with solid networks and representations and so on. Think about them. And once you see what they can do, the type of things that they talk about, the experience that they have, you can see that potential. So we've got to think about it. Adapting best practices from peers and plugging into our, research environment is very important. That's why networks, that's why these alliances are important. So when you think about research, a career in research, you think about how you can attract funding, you think about how your work can be made more important and exposed to others. Think about the collaborations. Think about Legon, think about UCC, think about KNUSC, UHAS, UEW, UMAT, UDS, and so on. Today, the universities are growing. For everything, there's a time for you to work with people from Legon. There's a time for you to work with people from UDS. There's a time when you can work with people from UHAS. There's a time for everything. And there are things that somebody there might be good for, but not for others. So a lot depends on the individual networks that you form. A lot depends on the institutional networks that we push out for. The university must have a research office professionally run to support researchers. And the university research office must not introduce a new bureaucracy, must not slow down the pace of the work being done. It's important that we do, so there are responsibilities all around. Good researchers, good governance, good management of the research environment, and an ability to show that we can do something different from what everybody else is doing. Thank you.
And thank you so much. You spoke about influence, collaborating with partners and interdisciplinary researchers to be able to minimize certain biases that the reader or the reviewer may find around us. Okay, so imagine I'm a researcher from Africa. I've never published in a 4-star journal before. I've been publishing maybe ABS rank 1. Then I get a courage to send a paper to a 4-star journal. Is it possible that the editor or the reviewer may also check my previous papers and see the gap and therefore say, oh, since you have not even published in 2 or 3 ranked, I'm not sure the paper is going to be good, and use that as a bias against me? Okay, thank you.
So if I receive, let's say I'm a resident in the US, your document has been sent to me to referee. The first thing I will do, and he's coming from Lagos. How come coming from UPSA? I haven't heard of him before. The first time is I go to Google. Who is this person? Nobody has told me to go to Google, but that's what today everybody will do. Go to Google, and Google tells you about the person. Okay, all right. It's not bad. I mean, so you know the environment in which he is operating. Then you read the piece, and they say, hey, this is very good. How come he's in this difficult environment and yet can do that? So if you are a good reviewer, you get interested. Some too might even decide that, oh, I don't believe that he did this. So they go and do all the plagiarism checks and so on, all the different checks that they can do. When they are satisfied, they are very impressed. They are happy that they discovered this person. Sometimes they'll come back to you and say, after it's been published, that they want to work with you. So there are some too that will not give you a chance. So I always say that luck plays a crucial role in this. Who your articles get sent to can make or make you. Some can do a critical review, but they'll give you pointers that will lead you very far. Some can do a review that will dampen your spirits. So luck is important. Don't say that, well, because I'm at UPSA, don't say that. Let people be curious. Write in a manner that is forceful, write in a manner that is not boastful, write in a manner that is not condescending. Let the person reading like you. Let the person reading it be excited, be wanting to know you. That's how I look at it, and that's how I work. Yeah, I go to conferences and somebody, oh, I read this thing that you wrote 5 years ago. I reviewed it, and I've been looking for a chance to meet you. I'm happy that he reviewed my work, and I've been looking for a chance to meet me. That's how you look at these things. Sometimes, being Africans, we tend to be too conscious of the biases, and we let that influence everything that we do. I strongly encourage young researchers, forget about it. There's bias. You can't take it, you can't do it, but learn to live with it, learn to overcome it. Let people respect you for what you can write, not because of how you look. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Prof. My name is Thomas Kwanzaa, and I teach here. My question is on the review process of competitive grants. Is it always the case that the reviewer knows the applicant, or there are cases where the review process is done blindly, such as to, my question is actually closely linked to his, such as to avoid some of these biases? Yes.
Yeah, I think in most cases, it is blind. But when you are looking for a reviewer, you are looking for a reviewer who knows, not the person, but the environment or the subject, you see. So if somebody were to give your proposal to a reviewer who doesn't know the subject, it will be unfair, you know. So I have several proposals, and as soon as I begin reading the review comments, I know who wrote it, you know, because I'm old enough, I've been in the field for a long time, and I know who thinks what way. So as soon as I see some words in there, I know who wrote it. Of course, I can't ask formally who wrote it. Maybe a year's time, 2 years' time, I'll go to a conference and be, oh, so I did this. I say, yeah, I do. Because only you talk like that. Only you. You know. So that as you grow, you get to know people in your field. You may be in Ghana, but all the Nigerians who work in the area know you. You get to know them. By all means, the likelihood of your things going to somebody in Nigeria is very high, because it is assumed in the UK that they know you, they know Ghana. So you find Nigerian reviewers, you find Kenyan reviewers, you find Ugandan reviewers, but they always like somebody who knows your environment.
Thank you, Prof, for the presentation. At times, you want to partner. You talked about networking with colleagues from other institutions, or institution to another institution. You are a young researcher, and then you want to partner with someone who has been getting grants. So you approach him, and then looks like he looks down upon you. So he rejects you because you have never gotten anything. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, you see, you made the first mistake. You are partnering with somebody who is getting grants. He doesn't need you. You see, you are looking for somebody who's already getting grants. So that person does not need you in the first place, unless he's a good Christian who wants to build capacity around the world. So you are looking for, when I say partners, you are looking for people who you want to sell an idea to. So you can go to somebody who you know has some experience in this area and say, look, I have this idea. I'm not coming to you for your idea. I have this idea that we can do. So you convince the person that partner with me and we can achieve something great. That works. A year ago, a young lecturer at the University of Ghana came to me and said, Prof, I have this idea. I want to apply for a UK government grant. We're looking for 2.3 million pounds to do something. And, but I want a UK partner who is willing to partner with me. So do you know somebody I can recommend? In my experience, having worked around for so many years, I know many of the people in the UK who work on Africa. I know many of them, especially those who work on Ghana. I said, yeah, give me a couple of days. So I wrote to this professor at Oxford, and I said, I have this young woman who wants to work in this area. I'm begging you, partner with her. The two of them came together. They wrote a beautiful proposal. They got the money. That's how these networks, that's how you take advantage of who you know and so on. You don't need to, they didn't know each other, but I can imagine that through this, they are going to be doing many more things. You are in Legon, the one is in Oxford. Oxford is where everybody wants to go. So if you are in Legon and you have a partner at Oxford and you do many things for many years, your future is clearly very bright. That's how, you've got to be strategic in how you form these things. So you have something that you are set. The man in Oxford agreed because it was something that was well done. And that he was happy to put his name on something that is going to, I mean, he's going to gain marks for working with an African woman. That's one point. He's going to get more money to do work in Africa, which he doesn't have. So that's another advantage. So be strategic. That's the word I always use, strategic. Invite individuals, what they bring and what you bring. Show that what the two of you bring will lead to a much bigger product that either of you can get.
How we can go around the politics of looking for grants. Because there are some grants that you can tick all the boxes and still will not get it. For example, there was a grant we were looking for, and to get diversity, they needed somebody from Monash, Fiji. We did all that. And to the best of the knowledge of the team, we submitted a very good proposal. We still didn't get it.
And they took it personally.
So at the point, you are telling to take it personal, So how do you go around the politics? Like some of the grant, I think you may have to know somebody who formed the grant. How do we go around it as an individual and as a university?
I've already mentioned the biases and the prejudice and so on. I've mentioned that. It's possible that you wrote a very, very good application. But it's also possible that there were many other good applications. You see? So when there are many other good applications, then of course, many other extraneous factors come in. If you had a very good application, but there were 5 others from Ghana, there were others from Nigeria, others from different countries. Because of that, those considerations that go into the selection may have nothing to do with whether it was good or bad, because there are many other good ones. Increasingly today, people pay attention to, when they talk about diversity, they are looking at the Francophone and so on. If I was a young person today doing research, I would look for a Togolese friend who's working in my area and try to build some kind of partnership with him or her. That's what I would do if I was a young person, because I know that if we wrote an application and I show that it's a francophone, anglophone arrangement, it will score much higher than many others. I know that. So don't take it too personal. I can understand you, but there are others who also believe that they wrote a very, very good proposal like you. It is not politics. It is luck. It is luck. It is circumstances. They are very different things. The man doesn't know you. They don't know you, or you know them. There's a tendency to think that we've done a very, very good job. There's a tendency to think that we've done a very, very good job. But others are also doing good jobs.